Mr. Evans has sent her regrets. She will not be able to attend this evening. Can I have a motion to approve our agenda, please?
Excellent.
Mr. Cranfeld, is there a second? Mr. Del Duca, is there any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of our agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? We come to a time now when we have public comment. Public comment is for the board to hear comments from the constituents, the voters, the citizens of the city of Burlington on any issue with which they'd like the board to hear. It is not a time for us to have a discussion or a dialogue. We will listen, and we will have a chance at the time if we need to reflect, but please do not expect that we will respond to you at this time. Max Moreau, please come forward, and you can, the table there, there's a microphone, and welcome, Max.
Hi, my name is Max Moreau. I'm a co-captain of the Burlington High School hockey team.
I'm Jeffrey. I'm the other captain.
Our issue here today is that we recently learned of a budget cut in the sports department of 15%. When we learned of this, we heard that there was going to be a cut of the hockey team. This greatly upset us as players, but also people in our community. So the first thing we went out to do, we set up a petition. We got in one day over 250 names in the school that support keeping the high school hockey program, and also another 100 names from the general public that support the Burlington High School hockey program and the athletics department in general.
Really just what we have to say is that athletics as a whole is part of BHS's identity, and Burlington students take great pride in athletics, and not specifically the hockey team, or that's not what I mean, but the hockey team, not just us, but all athletics as a whole. And we would be doing this if you cut the soccer team, if you cut the girls basketball team. It's a part of BHS that we as students take pride in, and it's part of our identity. We'd like to keep it as whole as possible, and we believe that taking 15% of the budget really would separate us, not separate us, but what's the word?
Sports in general stay with you your entire life. They set you up for opportunities in life that other people that aren't involved in sports, like getting a job. And often a question that people ask is, what are you involved in? What have you been in that involves teamwork, working with a group of people? And I believe that sports is something that completely qualifies you to answer that statement. In our hockey team, we were just about as close as family, and this would be a major hit on us as a whole. And if any other program were to be cut, it would be devastating, and it would ruin the chances for many people, many students here growing up, and would change their lives. Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Max and Jackie. We appreciate you coming forward and giving us your voice.
Thanks.
Jason Lenahan? Good morning, Jason.
Good morning to you too. Good afternoon, good evening, whatever time zone we're in. I'm here along with the boys to support what they had to say and to discuss the proposed 15% cut to the extracurricular activities after-school budget for Burlington High School, knowing that it would have likely a profound effect on the hockey team, but also affect other activities. I heard such rumors as the school only putting on one play next year as a result of this. The loss of a spring or fall production is unacceptable to those many that have joined Jack, Max, myself here tonight to talk through this. I just wanted to reinforce some of the things that these kids have done, challenged by numbers over the years. The boys that you just spoke with have gone out and recruited kids to join them on the team. Whether or not they had a hockey background was sort of irrelevant. They would teach them and welcome them, kids of any ability. And we have kids of every ability playing on that hockey team and all playing. That isn't necessarily true in all sports, that all kids that are on the sports play. But that is true in this hockey team, and it's a great thing. Just wanted to talk about some of the things, and I haven't printed this, trying to be green, because it's 3 pages worth of things that I found on the Google today. But I'd like to just talk about the effects of sports on high school students. And if you Google effects of sports on high school students, you will readily find many links with the supporting documentation. And I'm just going to read a few things that I found. Quoted from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune in 2007, the Colorado Department of Education in 1992. Athletes have significantly higher GPAs than on non-athletes. Cutting sports and cutting participation rates in any sport is not something that works on an academic scale. Athletes have a higher rate in civic involvement. Some of the times it's team rules that support that. If you are going to be on this team, then you are going to do X number of community hours. I know the school supports that in general, and the teams revolve around that. Sports programs promote positive health behaviors and deter negative health behaviors. This is from the Archives of Pediatrics and Adolescent Medicine dating back to 2000. Obesity is a problem that we're facing nationwide, and athletes and athletics, according to these folks, help with that pandemic, if that's the right word. We had a group of people in the library last evening because we recently heard that not only was there going to be this budget cut, but there was going to be a significant cut or entire cut to the hockey program. And there were 100 or so people last evening, people from the community that have ties to hockey, former hockey players dating back to the 70s. Right? Players from the 70s who aren't involved in the program but have been at one point in time or another, talking about the community, the spirit, the school spirit. And we saw a lot of school spirit this year with participants, non-hockey participants at the games. A lot of fans came to cheer on first-year goalies, who, if you saw him speak passionately about his team last night, someone who gave up being the captain on the alpine ski team to be the backup goalie skating for the first year on a hockey team because he was so passionate about it. There's a lot of community support for this program, for this team. The numbers are growing for this team. There are a number coming up through the feeder program, which is Burlington Amateur Hockey, but there are also a number of kids who haven't played hockey that see the opportunity and are granted an opportunity that a lot of kids in a lot of schools don't have. So I think that we're here in support of trying to find ways not only to save the hockey team, but we're also trying to find ways to save all of the extracurriculars, all of the after-school programs, and think that there might be some opportunity to do that in some of the finances that the board has.
Thank you, Jason. Barbara Hedrick? Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you. Good evening. So I am here to also support a full funding, no cuts, in athletics and co-curricular activities. And my passion is with hockey, but I look out for the development of all the students. So I did quite a bit of research. I went back and read the minutes from the school board in December and January, and I would first like to talk about that. I was really impressed when I read tonight's core values, and they include community engagement, data-informed decision-making, transparency and accountability, and inclusion equity. So I thought, okay, that's a good start. I agree with all those things. But I was a little concerned when I read the budget public hearing minutes from the school board meeting in December 18th. And nowhere in here is there a mention of a cut in athletics. On page 10, it says additional cuts to co-curriculars, but not anywhere in here in the pluses or minuses does it mention a cut in athletics. The last page, however, says there's a public hearing on January 7th and January 8th. So when you folks didn't see anybody from athletics come to those meetings, that's because we weren't informed that this was going to happen. So I know mistakes happen, but I just want to point out, we're here because we just found out that this is happening. And we didn't find out through a formal way. We found out by putting dots together. And that's why we had that meeting last night. So please realize that we're here doing everything we can to make sure that athletics and co-curriculars stay whole. So the other piece of research I did, I'm a numbers person, is I went to the school board finance meeting on March 5th. And it was a very helpful meeting because they really dig into the details and the numbers. And for 2013, there are two items that were mentioned that I would like to point out. A gentleman from the Burlington Central Office, his name is David Larcom, gave an excellent presentation. And he said, there is a possibility, it's a possibility but not definite, there's a potential error in the categorization of $385,000 capital expenditures for the middle school roof project. It's been recorded as repair expense. So it's unusual to have $385,000 of repair expense equal exactly to a capital expenditure on a roof and other projects at Edmonds. So he's going to look into this. If that is an error, if it's supposed to be in the capital fund, that $385,000 repair expense would get reversed. And his comment to me, because I followed up with him after the meeting to make sure I understood this well, right now he's estimating a deficit for fiscal year 13, which ends in June, of $191,000 deficit. But if there is an accounting error, and if the accounting error is corrected, that changes the deficit to from $191,000 deficit to $194,000 surplus. And that carries in from the general revenue fund into the new year. So I'm really going to be looking forward to seeing what David has to say about that. It's not a definite, but it's a possibility. And I want athletics and co-curriculars to be the first ones that benefit if that money gets added back into the general fund. Is everybody with me? Am I? Okay. He also said, quote unquote, a relatively smaller amount of money budgeted in the current fiscal year for 2013 for which a specific purpose has not yet been identified. Again, that was presented in a written report to the Finance Board on March 5th. So in 2013, there's a potential for $194,000 of funding to be available to keep our athletic budget and co-curriculars whole. Category number 2 has to do with 2014 budget items. The school has been advised that its health care premiums are going to be less than what it budgeted. And there are real brand-new savings of $157,000. Okay, so the budget assumed a higher cost, but the actual cost is lower, and the savings $157,000. That money could actually pay for the $103,000 that's proposed to be cut from athletics and co-curriculars and have money left over. The comment in the finance board meeting was, well, this isn't necessarily free money. We have places where it's required that we need the money and other places where it's desired. Well, who decides between required and desired? I think athletics is something we place a high priority on because it's the development of these students. And also, this is really, really important. These students were not responsible for the overspending that occurred in certain budget categories, like the overspending on early retirement plans, $220,000, the overspending on workers' compensation, the overspending on substitute teachers, $188,000, the overspending on lawyers, $130,000. So that overspending should not be penalizing them. Okay, it should be found in other areas. Jeannie, I think, is really on top of things, Superintendent Collins, by negotiating with the state for more revenues to pay for the higher cost of services for students that are receiving English as a second language. I think that's quite helpful. The written reports in the minutes say that might bring in $700,000. So the subtotal for 2014 is $214,000 for real because of the health saving cost. Oh, there's also $57,000 in marketing for the magnet schools and private partners related to pre-K, but I'm not going to get into all that detail. And another $700,000 from the state. So I'm looking at these buckets of money and I'm saying, wow, things aren't really fixed. The numbers are still in flux. So why are we making decisions to cut sports like hockey that have been part of Burlington High School since 1972? So hockey's been here for over 40 years. It's really a tradition, and it's within the culture of the entire community. You don't see many people playing football at 50, but there are 70 hockey teams in Burlington where guys are playing football at 50 years old. So it carries forward with them. And where I work, if you play hockey, you get hired. So. Last category is I think that the school really needs to look at savings in other areas, sort of the concept of sharing the pain. So areas where I would look for savings are professional development, because that budget has been growing quite a bit, and also to see if there's savings that can occur in not eliminating, but just being more economical when it comes to retreats. So the total of all these little buckets added up together is $508,000 plus a potential of $700,000 more from the state. So I would really like us to work through the numbers with more rigor, being less arbitrary on where the cuts are made, because we do not want to have these adverse impacts on the development of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Max, did you give us your petition? I didn't ask for it, but could you give that to us, please? Thank you. Thank you, Barbara, for your very thoughtful comments.
Thank you.
Did any board members want to reflect on the comments they heard tonight? Commissioner Mattson?
Yeah, I am a huge sports fan, much to my wife's, I think, disappointment. And I do think sports are a major part of the athletic programs. And as part of these discussions, when we were looking at this across-the-board cut of co-curriculars and athletics, I think that along with cutting 2 central office positions, asking for some reductions in places where we felt like we've been overstaffed, such as the potential service providers for special education and a number of other places. I think Barbara even touched upon a good number of places where we have significant changes that can occur in numbers within the year, even such things as, sequestration could hit us the other way for a couple $100,000 that we'll be hearing about tonight. And these things are all kind of, are tough, and we do have to be looking at it, and I think it's hard. I think we are looking at a program that has had, in the hockey case, number struggles. And from what I understand last night, there was a lot of discussion about how those numbers probably have completely bottomed out. And that there is getting to be some more support, more numbers coming up through the years. But so I think I think there is a valid point here that we need to be very careful about what we do when we have this sort of short-term need to do something, and we may have a short-term issue, and we need to make some long-term solutions. And I sent a note today, for example, to a few members of the city government who were at the meeting last night, in large part to see, because hockey is a sport that has a lot of connections within the city. We rent space from Letty, which is a city program. I think that we depend a lot on our numbers coming in from non-school programs. And, can we find ways to work across the community to create some both short and long-term solutions for a particular program like this? But I think at the same time, we need to be thinking about, how do we best provide the services and best provide the opportunities for the kids across the entire athletics program, because every sport sort of has the same aspects to it. And I think we have to be, just as we think about our curriculum and what do we want to be providing, I think, the athletics should be probably hearing and talking to the, curriculum committee as well. I think that this has opened a big debate, and I know Ben was at this meeting last night, and I talked a lot to him about what was said and some things that we were talking about before the meeting. So I think it is important that we're thinking about it, and probably even at the curriculum level where all these things fit in.
Are there any other reflections? I neglected to ask, did anybody who didn't have a chance to sign up want to talk to the board? Did I miss anybody for public comment? Okay. I would just like to reflect that I'm very proud of the Burlington High School students coming forward. I know that some students weren't able tonight because of their other academic responsibilities they had, but it's very important that we hear from our students, and that's exactly what we're all here for the students of our district, to do the best that we can within the resources that we have. The next item on our agenda is recognizing board members. Being on a school board is not one of those jobs that enhances your political career or even some of your friendships, nor does it enhance your financial background. You're basically here for the students. And I'd like to thank David Davidson for his years of service on the Burlington School Board. He is going off the board representing Ward 3, and I'd like to thank him. David has been a person that you could always rely on to have a thought, a very significant thought, and not always at the beginning of the discussion. And he has, I thought, brought a lot to our discussion around racism, around diversity and inclusion within our district. And he was very significant in helping us develop the very rigorous evaluation of our superintendent that we are going to go through tonight after this meeting. He was the one that kind of put together our format for it to be done, and spent numerous hours, and I'd like to thank him for that. Now, David, you don't get a big check, and you don't get a big dinner, but we do give you a plaque. And this plaque, David, is to recognize your work on the Burlington School Board, and it's a way to show the people in your family over the years that you spent many time thinking about what was best for the students of Burlington. And we thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and thank you all, fellow board members. I really appreciate your acknowledgement and the time that I've been able to spend here with you and discussing things with you. And I don't plan to leave entirely. I hope to continue to be involved. I'm sure I will be. My daughter's in the school, so instead of goodbye, I'll say see you soon.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
The superintendent's report?
Okay. As many of you know, and just in case you missed it, the mayor promised in his seeking office last year that he would like to spend a week in the schools, which I think is an absolutely wonderful opportunity that we haven't done in my 13 years in the district, because our schools are city schools, and for the city and the schools to be working together actually in the schools themselves is a wonderful opportunity. So tomorrow at 1 o'clock, there is a press conference here at Burlington High School that's going to talk about what's happening in the schools. All of you are invited, all of the public is invited. And there are some other public opportunities that are happening next week while the mayor's office is physically located here. On Monday, the 18th, at 9:45 a.m., we have a kickoff with Governor Shumlin and other Vermont legislative and educational leaders. On Wednesday, March 20th, we have, the mayor has a roundtable connecting school and community where he has invited local business leaders to join him in a conversation with students and community members about the skills and proficiencies young people will need to be ready for career, college, and to contribute to a better Burlington and Winooski, of which we heard tonight, sports is one. Absolutely the team player piece. That is open. I hope some of the students in the room attend. I hope some of the parents also attend, and board members are welcome. Just prior to that, the mayor will be meeting with myself, Mary Lundeen, the superintendent of Winooski, the mayor of Winooski, and I believe board chairs from both communities to talk about the Partnership for Change and the transformation that is occurring in both of our schools. On Friday, the 22nd, another public activity from 1:30 to 3 is the Burlington High School Town Hall meeting, wrap-up, celebration, reflection, and next steps. And so we'll have all of this information on our website by late tomorrow afternoon and on our district calendar as well. And I hope that, and we'll be sending out an alert now for some of this information, so I hope that people will have an opportunity to join the mayor in the school for a celebration of our schools. Diversity and equity update. There are very thorough reports that were posted in last week's Diversity and Equity Committee meeting. There is a lot happening. I need to stop and commend and thank Sparks, Nikki Fuller, and Linda Walsleben for stepping in to the vacuum that we had with the loss of Dan Ballon. Sparks in particular has taken over Equity Council and is really revamping and re-inspiring that group as they really struggle through where they're headed, and continues, while taking on Equity Council, to make a significant difference in the climate of our schools by responding very early to any incident that's reported of bullying or harassing behavior, and also helping our designated employees investigate incidents as they come forward, as well as not quite letting go of his founding program, the ADP program in the high school. And so it's taking a great deal of energy, and I really want to thank him as he's here and point that out. Nikki Fuller as well has taken on kind of the resource side of things that came out of Dan's portion of that office, and as well as going in the schools and talking with teachers of color, and all new teachers to assess where we are with our climate, our retention efforts, and is making recommendations on what we need to do. She's also a resource, particularly to our teachers of color who might need, any new person in a district really sometimes needs help navigating the system. It's a new system. I think as board members, you might relate to that. And our teachers of color might have some special needs beyond just the usual needs of how to navigate a system that is almost entirely white. And she has taken on that role, as well as leading the principal searches that are underway right now. We're finishing IAA tonight, and we're starting Sustainability Academy tomorrow. And Linda had not been at the table with us as we're doing this work, but she has come to the table with us now, and she is meeting with us regularly as she is working very hard with our new American families and our students, and trying to orchestrate change in our model. Brown University will be in the district in the next 2 weeks, meeting with the high school and middle school administration and myself, and give feedback on their observations when they came and did a study of our model in the past. Linda, there is a meeting with the Parents for Change, New American Parents, next Monday night. That's our quarterly check-in on how we're doing on the commitments that we made in November. And Linda's integral to that and to the different committee works that's going on with those commitments. So for a full measure of everything that's happening right now, I refer you to the reports that are posted on the Diversity and Equity Committee board docs of last week. Partnership for Change update. As many of you know, we have begun our search for a director for the next 2 years for Partnership for Change, 2 to 5 years if we get the second year round of grants. Those interviews took place yesterday, interviews with a variety of stakeholders, including a large community and board member opportunity last night. I don't have with me right now the expected time frame of when we expect to close this, but I will say that I thought that we had an excellent pool of candidates. The 3 candidates who came forward were brought forward as finalists, each have their own particular strengths, and I think the pool was very, very good. We also are in the process right now of hiring new fellows. The grant was designed, because this is an initiative that's intended to be as inclusive of as many voices as possible. It's not designed to have the same fellows in place every year. We want to build capacity and build passion and commitment to this. And so as this year's fellows in their first year, we're looking for next year's fellows for the 5 implementation areas. And applications for that were due March 10th, and we expect to make decisions on the fellows the first week of April. There are some other exciting things happening in Partnership for Change right now. We are working on the graduation expectations for many of you who were part of the February 2nd community conversation or the smaller conversations that were taking place. That information is being pulled together. The 2 different schools are working on graduation expectations. They won't be exactly the same at both schools, but there isn't a lot of overlap. And we're planning a school development institute the week of June 17th to align what we've been doing and where we're going, and to talk about, it's a time for teachers to talk about piloting the graduation expectations once they're identified. This week, we're also hosting in the district Adam Urbanski. Adam is a union reformer connected with both NEA and AFT. He is funded by the Nellie Mae Foundation to assist both Winooski and Burlington to look at our labor management relations differently, to look at negotiations differently, and to really kind of reform the labor management relationship so that it is focused on students and student achievement. I and Kathy and Sarah Jane just left a meeting. I spent the last 6 hours with Adam. We spent 3 hours or an hour and a half together, I guess. And I left that meeting with a lot of hope. I'll share more with the board later. I think the union left that meeting with a lot of hope as well. And I'm just very excited about it. As we're transforming our schools, we also could be transforming the way we do business all across the district. And I'll talk some more about that later. 2 more things coming up under Partnership for Change. We have a student site visit to Providence, Rhode Island, April 7th to 9th. The youth implementation team is hosting this. There are 10 to 12 kids from Burlington and Winooski who will be going down to Providence, Rhode Island, meeting the Met School, Annenberg, etc. And also students are creating a video to engage other students in what's happening with Partnership for Change. And on April 5th, 16 teachers and 10 community members will be participating in a design thinking conference. And on April 4th, there's going to be a talk and reception at the Main Street Landing Theater, and you'll get more information about that just prior to the Design Thinking Conference. Those are the updates in that area. Enrollment in kindergarten registration, we're thick into it now. Kindergarten registration closes within the next week. By early April, we anticipate being able to know, in Burlington, when you're applying at the elementary school level, you rank the schools by your order of preference as opposed to being assigned to a school automatically. And so by the first week in April, we will be able to get back to parents on whether or not we can meet their preferences. Usually this time of year, we meet pretty close to all of the preferences. It's later in the year and the closer we get to the start of the school year that it becomes difficult to do that. We continue to have a great interest. I don't have numbers for you tonight on what our registration is. When I asked, the feeling really was, it's just not worth the time to count them quite yet. Let's let the registration close. So I'll have that for you next meeting. think that's it.
If there are any families viewing this very exciting full board meeting, we do have tours in our schools, and you should go to each one of the elementary school websites, and they have times when they give tours of their schools so that you can see what the school is and what they're doing, and get an idea of the school.
And we strongly recommend that you do that you tour at least a couple of schools, because the different schools have different personalities.
Right. And it's always better not just to choose here one, but because your child may not have the same fit for a school that a neighbor's child might. So it's important for you to check out different schools to see what fits for you, your family, and your child. Okay? Report from the Finance Committee. Commissioner Holliday?
I just wanted to, speaking only for myself, participating in the director interviews last night, I want to thank the steering committee for the Partnership for Change. We saw three very distinct voices among the different directors, and it helped me to understand the multiple forms that both the position and the partnership could take, and I think they really did a nice job on allowing us to kind of envision the different directions that the partnership might go based on the skill set that a particular person came. Now, we all have our biases, our core convictions that are going to make us biased toward or against one candidate over another, but it did force me to to consider the different manifestations that the position and the partnership could take. So, thank you to the steering committee.
Commissioner Ken?
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize that as well, and I think it really benefited all of us that they were held at night this time, and there were a number of board members there from Burlington, Winooski, and it just led to a richer sort of discussion and questioning. I think there were about 10. And
There were 8 Burlington board members.
Eight, and then 2 from Winooski. 3 from Winooski.
They only have 5, so that's good.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mattson?
Two other things. One related to Partnership for Change. Most of the fellows have come from the teaching staff of the 2 schools up until now. Is that correct?
Not all. I
Not-
think
okay.
3 out of 5.
Okay, good. I guess I thought it had mostly been coming. I was just going to say,
Yeah.
looked like the applications were going beyond, and I was
Yeah,
hopeful
the
that.
proficiency did not, and I believe the youth did not, but I'm not positive on that.
Okay, but we are going well beyond the
Yes.
existing staff. And then I had a question. You touched briefly in talking about diversity related to bullying incidents, and I guess it's because it's immediate. But I was wondering if you could speak to how or what our approach is when we hear what I guess would be kind of public comment as occurred in the Front Porch Forum regarding to potential issues. What the school's response is, and I'll just say what I know is that one of my kids came home from today and said that this Front Porch Forum posting was talked about in the classroom with the kids, to try to get an understanding from the kids what they felt like was represented here, but I'd like to hear what the...
Well, anytime, first, one of the things that Sparks is trying very hard to do is to help parents as well as students understand that anytime you have a concern or you hear a concern reported to you, we need to know it. So from the responsive side, the sooner that we hear about an incident that may have occurred, the sooner we can act on it. From the proactive side, we're really trying to make some changes in the way we're present in the hallways, the way we're talking with kids, the way we're making sure that parents and kids understand that there is a place to come to, and making sure that we have processes and protocols in place to respond to an incident when it's brought to our attention or a concern. I'm not aware that teachers were talking with kids today, and I'm not aware that that was necessarily an intervention versus an individual teacher's idea.
I think it was an individual teacher, from what I understand.
Yeah, that isn't normally the way we would do it. If there were to be a widespread school conversation, that would be orchestrated by the administration with probably Sparks and Amy leading the cause. But we do take every opportunity to reinforce with students and with parents that we need to hear. This is a very large building. We have 11 buildings, and we can't be in every place at every time. And incidents can occur in a second. And so when we become aware of a hot spot, when we become aware of a pattern, when we become aware of anything that we can respond to, then the more data we have, the better. Our data actually shows that incidents have reduced this year. That's the data that's coming in. And that our interventions this year seem to be taking hold. However, that doesn't mean that things aren't happening, because in any school in America and in Burlington High School and all of our schools, there are incidents that occur on a daily basis. And the sooner we know about them, the sooner we can respond to them.
Is it clear how people can contact?
Could I ask Sparks to speak to that if he's willing?
Yes, I am willing. Yes, it is clear students know how to report. The part of the campaign that we're working on now is putting together meetings for parents and other community members. We have had meetings with some of the English language learner parents, and we're starting to roll out a whole nother set of presentations for community members, especially parents, so they can understand how to report and the difference between bullying and or harassment. The other part of it, we're almost are done with the website, and it's also going to be on the website, how to report, who to report to, what to report, how to report anonymously, because we want to make sure we have other ways for people to report if they are uncomfortable in reporting something to someone directly. But one of the things we encourage everyone to do, if there's a situation that someone knows of or a student is reporting to an adult, we cannot investigate it until we know what it is. But we do have designated employees in every school that have been trained by the state as to how to conduct an investigation, what to do when they receive information around bullying and or harassment. The high school, we have 4 designated employees because of the large number of students, but the postings are in all the schools, so you can go to any of the schools. You'll see the postings in the main office that covers the bullying and harassment, that tells you who the designated employees are, not only for the individual building that you're in, but who they are throughout the district.
Thank you, Sparks. Commissioner Alkinay?
So just to be clear, you're talking about incidents where the students would be engaging in bullying or harassing behavior towards other students. Is that accurate?
Towards other students, towards adults, or even adults to students. It's
So
any of those.
That's the last piece that I wanted to make sure that we're also being clear that there's a response. So could you, is this the same process if there's an incident where a student is concerned about behavior that a teacher is exhibiting?
Yes, but when an adult is involved in an allegation of an incident, our designated employees change, because that does become a supervisory issue. But the investigation still occurs, the report is taken, the investigation occurs, but now it would occur through the HR office as opposed to through the designated employees.
So one of the things, and I guess we can continue the discussion at the Diversity and Equity Committee, but I think it should be on the radar of the full board as an interest that I don't think that it's appropriate that the board needs to know specific details about incidents, but if we're talking about data-informed decision-making, the board is representing the community and wants to feel like there is a robust response to incidents and needs to have some method of understanding have confidence in the process.
So I would again refer you back to the reports that came to your committee last week. There is some data that Sparks reported in his report, particularly around the incidents that have been investigated this year. We have not reported adult-based incidents to the committee, partially because the numbers are small enough that we're concerned about identifiability. I don't know if that's a word, I just made it up. But certainly we can look at how to do that in a way that we can report it. But student investigations, Sparks did provide data on that.
Any other comments? Commissioner King?
I just want to clarify, is your report posted? Because it
In the
seems-
Diversity Equity Committee.
Oh, right, I went to that meeting, I think you handed it out and I didn't have a copy.
It is posted now.
It is posted now?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Crouch, Powell?
Yeah, and this, I don't know if this is something that needs to be answered, but as we've been defining the role of the board and sort of what our responsibilities are, and this is sort of piggybacking off of what Paul said, you know, getting a front porch forum post like that and passing it on, you know, I guess, how far should a board member go? And we talked, and Alan brought this up about new board orientation. You know, how far does a board member have to go besides reporting it? You know, what's our role in responding? And I'm not sure the public knows sort of what we're supposed to do. And oftentimes I'm not sure if we're looked upon as, you need to like do something about this. And I'm seeing more posts now come out from Porch Forum, like, isn't this on the board's agenda? Like, shouldn't they be dealing with this?
So I think, if I may, I mean, your responsibility is to let the administration know, and many of you did, and I appreciate that. Our responsibility is to respond, both to give the board information, so as soon as I became aware of the posting, I contacted the full board and our new board members to give what information we had. It's our responsibility as administration to respond to the allegation itself, and so in this particular posting, Amy immediately reached out to the poster and said, please talk with me. You know, I hadn't heard of this, and please talk with me, and they've communicated back and forth a few times today. And then I think for individual incidents, it may or may not be appropriate for me to provide you with details. Usually not. It kind of depends on what the incident is. But as far as your constituency, I think it's important that whomever contacts you knows that you have contacted the administration, that you feel confident that protocols are being followed and actions being taken, and your confidence only comes from talking with us.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Davidson?
I would just add to what Jeannie was saying, if it's okay, that you should also follow through and, you know, stay actively involved so that it's not just something we can satisfy ourselves with the report, but that we also stay involved and follow through and make sure that it is being addressed.
And that's a way that we could actually work in team. I mean, if particularly if you have a relationship with the person who made the complaint, you know, you sometimes are a liaison of what's working and what's not. We might think that something's underway, and you're hearing from the parent that that's not really working. We need to hear that, and maybe the parent's not telling us. I mean, I think that's possible. You're not going to be the one to pick up the investigation. That isn't your role, but you need to feel confident that it's happening, and that communication. You know, you might be a liaison for that.
Okay. Commissioner Mattson, a report from the Finance Committee.
Sure. Our last meeting was March 5th, and I don't think, we did take one vote to bring one item to the board, which really was more of a request, which I think was related to real estate that will be brought, I think, to the board in an executive session because it is real estate. But we also received reports on a number of things. The first thing I'll talk about is the year-to-date report. David presented to us where we appear to be year-to-date, which Barbara Hedrick already actually referenced, which was right now the best understanding is just under $200,000 deficit. While everything is still obviously very early. And, you know, there's a number of things that they were looking at on, again, as mentioned, capital versus expense and a number of other items, but it's a very preliminary number. But again, this is something we just try to keep tracking every month, and I always give the same sort of disclaimers at this level. What we're seeing with the implementation of the Munis system, as we're, you know, bringing on an entirely new software system this year, taken a while, but we're getting to the point where we're beginning to see granularity in this sort of report. The second thing we talked about was the school choice analysis. I think the board is aware that there was a changeover this year. In the past, we've had regional agreements where we have been, by state law, required to allow at least 10 kids per year to choose amongst usually a regional consortium of schools. And when that choice is made, there's a formula by which the tuition dollars that we would receive, because that student is in fact in the Burlington School District, that money would follow the student to the admitting district. And the change is that now students are allowed to go to any district statewide. There are still the same number, we can limit it to certain numbers. And the one major change, though, is now it was not required that money follows the student, which has led to a significant rediscussion of this, because we obviously have families who have sent their kids out of the district for choice. We have families coming into our district through choice. And there was an analysis presented to us showing where we've been over time. In general, basically we have I would call it a slight leakage. I think we've been net anywhere 4 students out to 13 students out, which in truth are not huge numbers, but they are, was not surprising. We probably have the biggest, most varied district, and we have a fairly very different group of schools around us, and the kids can choice out to. And at this point, for example, in fiscal 13, we have approximately, if I've got the numbers right here, about 13 kids who leave the district, and we have I'm sorry, I've got the numbers wrong here. It's 22 kids leaving the district, and we have about 18 kids coming in from outside the district. This does not include kids from the islands where there are no schools. This is literally in the choicing out. I think there is a discussion going on in the state right now where to go. We were supposed to set our numbers in January. I assume we set them at a very similar level. I don't know, but we have to have admitting numbers as well as sending numbers. And I guess that's a question I don't know the answer to, so I might ask the administration if they had any at the end on that. Additionally, we were presented with where the best see the tax impact of the budget that was passed. And that right now appears to be in a slightly better shape, but it still hasn't been approved by the Senate, the exact numbers. But we had been looking at close to a 7% tax increase right just before the election, but right about when we got this report on election night, it appeared that the tax increase would be closer to 6%. We also had a report on the projected funding loss of funding from grants. I think were we going to have a bit of a presentation on that tonight on potential issues of sequestration or not? Okay. So I guess we'll probably talk a bit more to that. I would refer you to the documents that are on the agenda for our last meeting if you want further detail or if you have further questions. And the last thing I'd just like to say is a big thank you to the voters of Burlington. Once again, I think we saw strong support for the budget. I know there's a lot of difficult choices in it. And it still is an increase. And we've been talking this year about where is education inflation coming from. And it's a problem that we have to keep going after because it's going to keep, the issues aren't going to change. So once again, appreciate all that came from Burlington. A lot of people have put a lot of work into helping us, both the district and the school board. I'd really say the school district. They're really supporting the school district more than anything. I mean, the board is putting forward a budget, but it's really the kids and the schools that are being supported by the town. That's it.
Commissioner Holliday, the Policy and Advocacy Committee.
Nothing to report, 2-minute meeting.
Okay. And you're meeting here,
That's true. We are meeting here in conjunction with the Mayor's Week at the high school next Tuesday at 7 o'clock.
Thank you very much. Infrastructure and Technology Committee, Commissioner O'Rourke.
We met this past Tuesday. First thing on the agenda was just an update financial report on the Flynn project, and all the numbers are in from the first part of it. And so we've got about $1.9 million more to do, and we've got $2 million to do it with. So we're in pretty good shape. Looks like we'll be able to stay within budget. The timeline would be that the work on the new gym and the kitchen will be done before school starts, and the C wing and some of the work around the library will be completed by the end of October, and then a couple more days for the our people to get in and complete the work that they need to do. We talked about our contract with Truex Collins Architects. We've hired them to do just an initial study on a project here at the high school. They're going over some of the previous audits that were done on the facilities a couple of years ago. They'll assist in the education plan, which will lead to programming and that sort of thing for a project. They're going to have a couple of discussions with staff and community on 21st century learning. They're also going to organize some tours of some high schools in the region, and that's actually being funded through part of the Nellie Mae grant. And also assist us in putting together an RFP for further services and some idea of the cost that will incur for design work leading up to a bond, which would have to go in the 2015 budget. And so anyway, that'll be a discussion. All those events will be at board level discussions and approvals. And right now we're looking potentially, their report will be finished probably sometime early fall. We'll be looking at putting out, if we decide to go that route, RFPs sometime in the winter, and then from that, shortlist some firms and interview them. And April the 1st, 2014 to hire an architect, and then we're looking at a November 2014 bond vote if the board decides to go that way. So it's good. We finally, after a lot of discussion, we've got at least our calendar set out. Mark Irish just went over some of the work that's going to be done this summer at the schools, and I won't get into that detail. It's in our minutes. There will be some disruption with some of the summer programs at Champlain Elementary, and I believe IAA for some internal cleaning and that sort of thing. I have a motion to bring to the board. Is to complete a lease purchase agreement for a new tractor, a lawnmower tractor, which will be funded out of operations budget.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner Chason? Do you want to?
Yeah, the current mower is 16 years old, and it's we can't get parts for it anymore. This mower is a much better one we had before. It's a $52,000 item, and we buy it over a 5-year period. It's a lease purchase agreement, so we'll lease it, and then at the end of those 5 years, we can buy it for $1. And again, this equipment, if it's taken care of, it's a 15 or 20-year investment, and it's a much larger mower than what we've had before, so it should help us as far as labor costs and that sort of thing of keeping up our grounds.
Are there any questions or comments of Commissioner O'Rourke? Pardon me? Yeah, are we ready? Are we ready to vote? All those in favor of the motion, which is, would you read it, please?
To approve the lease purchase of a loan tractor, sorry.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Anything else, Commissioner O'Rourke?
We had a security update just on some of the projects, and we're still looking at some funding sources to do that work. Most that I reported out in the last month. Technology, yes.
On safety, if I may comment, because I couldn't be at your meeting as I was in Japan. We also have completed the safety survey of the community, and I'll be bringing those results to your meeting next. We actually will get the results out to you much sooner than that of what the community is telling us is really most important in our schools. And we have gotten the Edmonds Elementary set up in place with, you now enter Edmonds Elementary through the Main Street door, and there is a camera that allows you and you get buzzed in.
And Mark's been meeting with all the administrators in the various buildings with the plans that Colin Lindbergh had come up with, and getting comment back from them. And then from that, we'll use whatever comes out of those plans as part of our security, overall district security plans. Technology report.
Smith, Commissioner King, did you have a question?
I just have to announce something somewhat tied to facilities because I'm so excited about it. That's that there are new stage curtains at Edmonds Middle School.
Which we'll be seeing.
And I want to thank Terry and Bailey and Mark Irish and all of the people that helped us, Jeannie, who helped us pull this together. It's an effort between the Edmonds Middle School and Edmonds Elementary School drama committees, Very Merry Theater, and the school district, a pool of money that replaced curtains that Keith remembers from the 1980s that were dusty and torn, and all the curtains were replaced.
And they're going to be in full display this
now.
weekend at
Yes,
Pinocchio.
at Pinocchio.
Edmonds Elementary School presentation of Pinocchio.
And all the musical concerts this spring, it also gets used on, first night, many other events. And Starlight Express, Andrew Lloyd
That's right.
Webber's Starlight Express will be the spring musical at Edmonds Middle School. So that'll be, yes, there are, I don't know if there are roller skates involved, but it's going to be quite the trip.
Mr. Roy, I'm sorry we interrupted.
Oh, not a problem.
We got
Sorry.
excited.
I just perked up because of the facilities.
Technology report. Paul discussed the CBAC testing, which is a Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium that's going to be starting in 2015 in our schools. And I believe, Paul, that is just for testing proficiency on
Replaces
using computers and...
No. Go ahead.
It's the new kneecap testing. We're doing pilot.
Oh, okay, all right.
Although it's not, I think it's not kneecaps. I mean, this is a national, it's replacing in coordination with the.
As we move
with
to the Common Core curriculum, the SBAC replaces the kneecap and assesses the new Common Core curriculum. What's interesting to note is that the SBAC, first of all, it does use technology, which means it'll also give us more immediate feedback on how our kids are doing. And so we need to make sure our technology is in place. But the SBAC assessment will begin before the Common Core curriculum is really taught much. And so we'll kind of be getting a baseline before we get too far into the Common Core curriculum. And that's coming down the pike in the next 2 years. And so we're testing things now.
So there's 3 schools that, because they found it works better if the kids have a place to go to rather than, especially the younger kids, pulling out stuff off a cart and set it up and that sort of thing. So there's 3 schools that Sustainability Academy of Flynn and Edmonds Elementary School that I think they had labs at one time and they were sort of absorbed for other uses. So in the next short time period, we'll be setting those labs back up. Quick discussion about the E-rate update. We had, this is reimbursement and discounts for internet services and telephone and fiber and internet services. This year it's $156,000. In 2014 it'll be going up to $163,000, and it's based on the level of reimbursement is based on your level of free and reduced lunch. And let me think. We just quickly talked about every year we purchase computers, and so we The RFPs will be going out in May, and our committee will be discussing them in June, and will be coming to the June board meeting for approval for purchase of computers for next year. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Rourke. Are there any questions of Commissioner Rourke? Okay, Curriculum Committee report, Commissioner Chittenden?
The first thing we talked about, this was February 12th, was the calendar. It's going to appear on the screen. And we looked at 2 vision calendars. We looked at a vision calendar for 2013-14, and just if you get a chance to go to Board Docs and compare the 2, you'll see how they're very similar. The only there are 3 months with big differences: October, May, and June. But anyway, this is the regional calendar that is very similar to our last year's school calendar, and it's the Chittenden County regional calendar. We've looked at it a couple of times now. First, when all the common days were set, and then as it was fine-tuned for our district. So we do have a motion to approve the proposed Chittenden County regional school calendar for 2013-2014.
Is there a second to that motion? Commissioner King? Any comments, questions? Commissioner Holliday?
Yeah, I would, how do I want to say this? Let me ask this question to Jeannie. Do we need to pass this tonight?
There are many, many constituents waiting on you passing it tonight. We're running about a month behind.
Yep.
And the emails are coming in, when's the first day of school, when's the February break, so in that sense, yes. In the sense of legally mandated, you have to pass it tonight? No.
I guess here's my thinking, that there was a lot of discussion about the 17th and 18th of October dates on the calendar. It was while you were in California, Japan, I think you were in Los Angeles at that time, or wherever you were, but that doesn't matter. Good reason to be there.
Make me sound like a worldwide traveler.
You were.
I was for 3 weeks there.
Sounds like a good rap song.
But, I don't know, I guess I just would have, I think it would be helpful for, I felt like that decision for the 17th and 18th was made quickly and maybe without as much, I'm not saying that I don't know where I stand on those dates, but that there may be some people that have some strong feelings about that the board didn't hear. And so before we make this finalized, personally, I would like to hear from, particularly from teachers. I'd also like to hear from you.
Thank you. I wasn't present at that meeting, and I was kind of surprised at the October dates being changed myself, and I appreciate what you're saying, because the calendar that was provided to administrators and teachers to look at had the usual 3-day weekend based upon the Vermont NEA days, and there was no opportunity to get any feedback at all with the change. So it is possible to pass this particular calendar with the caveat that you will be revisiting October. That does allow us to at least set the start days. The October change really would only affect whether you end on June 10th or 11th. It wouldn't affect the whole rest of the calendar.
Right.
So it is possible to approve this so that people know what their vacations are, people know, they can start making those travel plans, and just put in your motion or friendly amendment to the motion asking for further feedback on the October days for the curriculum committee perhaps to consider. I don't think we'd have it by next week though, Kathy, but we could do a quick survey of what folks say.
Commissioner King?
So
Okay.
I guess I would like to make hopefully a friendly motion that we get feedback from you, Jeannie, on your kind of unfiltered thoughts on that, maybe from Bob Abbey as well, representing the teachers or other teachers. I see Bob back there anyway, but just because I know that that's a date that a lot of people count on for family, for teachers count on it in a lot of ways, and I just want, before we make that change, I want to know, is there going to be like big blowback from it that people are really counting on? So.
Commissioner Chazen, do you find?
Block of 3 days, it used to be NEA.
The makers of the motion find that friendly? Okay. Commissioner King, did you?
Yeah, I would have done the same thing. I actually did have some concerns about, even though, I hear from plenty of parents, and I myself often, complain about, what, another Wednesday? But I think, it's sort of a personnel issue. I think that there are people who, for many years, who've had that weekend. And,
For 100 years, that's how long it's been
yeah,
in the
and
legislature books.
I don't think we should just, change it so quickly.
So
There were arguments about, it was disrupting the week, and my feeling is it's already a half week, so, what's a day? But that's my.
I just want to clarify that my friendly amendment was not to alter it, but
Right.
just to receive more input from more sources.
You could change it in the
Regarding
future.
those,
That could potentially allow.
it was just regarding those 2 days. Okay. Commissioner Davidson?
Can you guys explain the nature of the dilemma?
Sure. Historically, the 17th and the 18th have been Vermont NEA conference days. A couple years ago, the Vermont NEA conference stopped being held because no one goes to it. Not nobody, but most teachers don't use it. They use it for a long weekend for family. Teachers typically use it for doing crazy things like going to the bank, seeing a doctor, where you don't have where you're able to do that actually during the, teachers have a very difficult time doing that during a regular school day. It's also a long weekend for families that have planned on to have a break, some sort of substantive break in the first 3 months of the school year, so you're not going straight through from Labor Day to Thanksgiving.
So what is it that's been done?
So what's changed is the 16th was a half day, 17th was full, 16th was a half day for students, a full day for teachers with conferences. The 17th, I believe, was
Full
full conferences, and 18th, there was a day off for all.
Right.
So basically, that Friday, the 18th, as a day off for all was taken. And an additional full day was added to that week of October 14th.
Well, yeah, and it wouldn't have been that we would have had Friday in school. It would have been half day Thursday and then Friday off.
Friday off for everybody.
So it would have gone, for families, it would go from 2.5 days of school that week to 3.5 days that school.
So it provides a little bit of relief for working families that would have to struggle.
Right.
Right, and that's the opposite side. Absolutely.
Okay, Commissioner Graham? Okay.
Yes, for working families, and as somebody who is at least considering advocating for an alternative, we're talking about contact hours with students, and more hours of learning is important. And I understand 100 years of tradition is that a critical day for people to have a day off rather than to use it as an educational day.
Although it wouldn't add more hours to the school year.
Yeah, it would.
Right, I
It would be a
understand, but
takeoff for
it's
the end
the
of
sort
the
of broken up
I got it.
weeks that I think slow down some momentum of learning for a lot of students.
Rebecca, I honestly don't even know what I think about this. I'm just putting out an argument.
So what we're asking is the superintendent to gather some feedback. Do you anticipate a month, like in April, you'll have a final?
The question is, do you want it to go to committee first or straight to the board? If it seems like it should go back to committee.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday's a little early for that, although maybe we can turn it around by then, so we'll do our best, and if
Okay.
not, then it'll be the committee after
So we
that.
cannot tell the public
But-
exactly what,
But I don't think that's a huge issue if we're just talking about October.
Right.
I think that, there is a little bit of time for that as opposed to February,
Right.
April, and the first day of
everything
school.
else will be set except the February,
Well, it sounds like you're accepting it. You would have to change October. That's what, I'm sorry, I apologize, but that's how I heard the friendly amendment and the clarification after, Patrick, that you're accepting this, but you want to have more data on October?
That's exactly right.
And then you would reopen it if
Right.
you wish to change October.
that's right.
Exactly.
Commissioner King?
What would help everything is if there would be childcare provided in that time period. I mean, that's that is a possibility.
Right.
I think the Boys and
There
Girls
is,
Club
like, during our long
sticks
breaks,
to it.
and so, and, yes, I
You
agree
didn't
with
expect
you.
this to go on so long, did you?
Okay.
Right.
Pat?
So basically, the calendar
Yeah.
is the way it is on the screen. except put the caveat in, if we hear we hear a response that we need to have the 18th as a day off, then we'll come back to reconsider that. That's the understanding of this motion, in lay language, okay? Is there any other question, comments? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Commissioner Jason, anything? Okay.
Meredith.
Commissioner King seconded it.
Oh, for Patrick's?
Yeah.
Okay, we discussed a proposal for a schedule change, adding time for a weekly PLC to support school improvement as required by school restructuring plans. Next, we had a report from Principal Mellencamp from VHS regarding the graduation rate. So the numbers, the four-year cohort graduation rate, this would be students starting in 9th grade who graduate in 4 years. So it's 262 divided by 300, and it comes out to 87.3%. And then the other number, which people also find interesting, is the annual withdrawal rate, which is also called the dropout rate. So for this set of data, 2011 to 2012, there were 30 students out of 1,143, so that would be a 2.6% dropout rate. And then we did look at white papers on the family school partnership and the after-school program. And we closed with a discussion on reading recovery.
Reading recovery. Great. Any questions or comments?
Well,
Commissioner
it was
King?
actually more about tier 2 also, reading recovery as a
Right.
piece of that.
Right.
Yeah.
To support
So
and reading
yeah, I want to
recovery.
make sure. Yeah.
Sort of a discussion to be continued.
Yep.
Commissioner Hokanito. Diversity and equity.
Okay, so we're pleased to have almost a full quorum of the board, half a quorum, I don't know. 7 people were there at our board meeting, so I won't go into all the details of what happened, but I want to say that I appreciate Sparks, Nikki, and Linda's reports. So if you haven't looked on, you can hop on the March 6th minutes to see their reports on what they've been working on. So our committee expressed a much appreciation for the level of detail that they're providing there. And the other thing I wanted to say is that Sparks has mentioned a little bit about some of the work that he's doing around looking at the response to bullying and harassment. And we were having a discussion about recruitment and retention and essentially the climate for our teachers in the district. And one of the areas that we focused on was a conversation about ensuring that it's in addition to the addressing bullying and harassment that occurs between students, that it's important that our teachers are treating each other respectfully and appropriately. And so this is just a heads up for the Policy and Advocacy Committee that Sparks and his group is taking a look at some of the procedures that are in place, and there may come out of that some recommendations around policy. So just keep in mind that he's leading an effort that's looking at how teachers and faculty essentially relate to each other, with the hope that they're role modeling the kind of behavior that we want our students to also role model. And there may be some policy recommendations that come out of that. So that's the extent of my update. I want to keep it brief. People can look at the minutes if they want to. But
Are there any questions or comments of Commissioner Hokanito? Commissioner Hokanito, it's with sincere thank you and appreciation that I, representing the board, want to recognize you for your work in diversity and equity. You took on a new committee, you took on a task force report, and you had a deadline of October, and you got the policy, You got the
We
strategic
did.
plan, and I think you should feel very proud of all of the work you've done. Now, we can't give you a big pay raise, we can't
You
give you
can
a big
double
boost in
my
your
salary.
career, although I think this board might have boosted your career and you've gone on to something bigger and better with the state, but we really appreciate all that the time that you've given us. I want you to have this plaque so that your children and your grandchildren and whatever can see how you have really contributed to the community in Burlington.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I appreciate that.
Did you want to say anything?
No. Let's see. Thank you very much. I wasn't expecting that. So I'm happy to meet with whoever the next chair is of this committee to talk about continuing the work that we've been doing. And I've spoken a little bit with Nikki and Sparks around their contributions and the difficult task of coming in after a tragic event. And I feel like the district is well positioned to move forward and on a lot of initiatives, and I appreciate all the effort that Jeannie's put into hearing the response from the community, and I really do believe that we're turning a corner, and so I appreciate her leadership, and it's been a pleasure to be on this board. So, thank you.
Thank you. We're going on now to the consent agenda. You should have a hard copy in front of you. Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Commissioner King, Commissioner Chason. I'm going to ask the superintendent to talk about sequestration and the impact as it's seen on this agenda, on this consent agenda.
I would be happy to. You have, under the approval of consent agenda items, number B is FY14 reductions in force anticipated for teachers. And there is a handout that was not sent to you in advance because, very honestly, it was about 5 o'clock last night when we recognized, or 6 o'clock last night when Sarah Jane reminded me that there actually is a contractual deadline that we needed to meet. So I'd like to walk you through it. Basically, we knew that if sequestration goes through, the potential loss, additional loss of federal funds beyond what we've already budgeted for is projected to be up to 9.1%. Sequestration did go through, however, it was kind of delayed to happen after March, and if you listen to Bernie Sanders, there's talk of it being delayed once again, and the numbers keep changing. The only thing we know today is that potentially we could lose up to 9.1% of our federal funds, which is approximately $260,000 in all of our title funding and approximately $105,000 in our IDEA B special ed funding. Perkins will not be affected because the Perkins grant, we already have the small state minimum, so we've been told it will not be affected. So we had been aware of this, and we've been kind of trying to figure out what to do with it. On this memo, we have given you some information of what each of those grants cover. For example, in the title grant, there is about $1.3 million in teaching positions, as in classroom teacher type positions. You just added a classroom teacher in the budget process because if we hadn't, we would be out of compliance with the class size mandates, and therefore reducing classroom teachers does not make sense in looking for where to find this money. There's about $75,000 in title paraeducator positions and about $200,000 in non-teaching support positions. In IDEA B, we get approximately $1 million, and the 9.1%, is $102,000. And within that grant, there's about 8 special educator positions and 3 special services non-teaching positions, as well as a number of other things. That's the grant that supports the computers that allow the special educators to do their IEP work, the testing protocols, some of the IEP services that we provide that require equipment go into that grant, a number of different things. For all of these areas, we feel that we can cover the 9.1%, about $360,000. from non-teaching staff and non-staff expenses if we need to. Again, I'm hopeful that we won't need to find 9.1%, but we did identify where we could find 9.1% if we need to, and we anticipate only the reduction of 0.4 FTE if we go to the very worst case scenario of a 9.1%. So we've kind of given you an overview, and I thank Sarah Jane for pulling this together later today. Anticipated reductions in force. You, as the board, must act on anticipated reductions in force before March 15th, because we must notify the union by March 15th of what those anticipated reductions in force are. The union has an opportunity to appeal those RIFs to the board, and then the board must make them final. They would then become final on March 28th. So currently, the RIFs that are in place because of our budget process are identified as 1 Burlington High School special educator, 0.6 Burlington High School English teacher, 1 elementary Spanish teacher, and because of sequestration, an additional 0.4 district coach position. We are purposefully leaving it not specific at today's date of which particular, we're not putting in names, we don't need to right now, because that gives us a little bit more time to analyze within our different coaching positions, for example, where if we had to go that far, we could do. With and then the second page of this gives you more detail, the numbers that might help you understand how we got to this. With sequestration, and it's taken me a long time to learn how to say that word, we anticipate, what the state is telling us now and the feds are telling them, is that if it comes to fully be implemented, it probably is going to be between 3 and 5%, not 9.1%. The teaching positions we anticipate would be brought back first. However, I do want to be very transparent, as the sports people said tonight, that the way that we might have to reach if sequestration goes through, this is serious stuff, we might be affecting our summer school program. Elementary summer school program might be significantly affected. Our liaisons, which are funded through Title, might be significantly affected. We don't have to make those decisions until late spring when we will know more. So those are not on RIF list. The only things that go on a RIF list are the teaching positions, because the teaching positions have a timeline where we have to RIF, and the other positions we don't need to until late spring. So we don't need to alarm anybody quite yet, but I do want to make sure that you're aware of where what we're looking at. The 2A is already there. Idea B, we're looking at, the DTI stands for Discrete Trial Intervention, which is a service that we provide for students with autism whose IEP calls for that service. Vocational transition position, where we're helping our older high school students with special needs connect to vocational services. Some miscellaneous support staff, some conference money, some equipment money that we would have to do without. And then the budget RIF is at the bottom of that page. So that's some background on sequestration. We're playing with imaginary numbers right now, but we need to be prepared in case it does reach the level that was originally identified. We have between now and March 28th really to finalize if we're actually going to do a RIF of the 0.4 coach. The other positions, you have already determined those RIFs through the budget process. And then even after March 28th, even if we end up riffing a coach, a 0.4 coach, we still can bring that position back if the sequestration effect is not 9.1. In other words, we don't have to go with that, but on today, before March 15th, we have to do basically what we think is our worst case scenario, act on that, and then start to pull back as what we anticipate to be good news starts to come in. Meredith.
I keep hearing different things about, if we go back, if we forget sequestration, which I would love to do for a minute, and go back to our budget cuts, did anyone decide what to do with Spanish? Which side is being cut, 6th grade or down lower?
Yes, we have been meeting with, Stephanie Phillips and I have been meeting with the elementary, well, actually, the K-8 principals about Spanish. And ultimately, and we've gotten feedback from the Spanish teachers themselves. And the first preference actually was to go with a 4-5-6 model, but the reality is that we have 2 schools of 18 classrooms who cannot cover the prep periods by going with that. So we are going to go with a 1st through 6th model with the remaining Spanish teachers.
Okay, so we are going from K to 6 to first through?
No, we're actually
Wait.
going from first to six to first to six.
Okay.
So what that does mean is that there will be less Spanish in the primary grades, but we need to be able to cover, we
And-
need to be able to cover teacher prep time using Spanish as well.
And then it goes by seniority for who
Yes.
is cut, and is the person aware of that yet?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. The budget, the anticipated budget cuts, the other two that are on there have to do with where the high school needed to find their funds, their cuts that the board had asked them to find. So all of those people have been notified informally because the actual RIF process has to go through the BEA before it's final. But
So- and
people in the
then-
positions are aware.
And so it really isn't worth getting into what might happen with Spanish yet if sequestration happens, because it's so
At the
out there.
moment, actually, I had an administrator ask me that question, and my response was, at the moment, the board has made it pretty clear, has made it very clear through the budget process that we are down one Spanish teacher. Spanish is not funded by title, and therefore, Spanish is not affected by sequestration, unless the board didn't like the cuts that we have to make in title and wanted to move some of those title dollars over to local. But you can't do that after March 15th. We cannot RIF additional personnel that we have not notified the BEA about after March 15th. So if you wanted that on the table, if you wanted a worst-case scenario of the Spanish program without public notice on the table of being RIFed, you'd have to do that tonight. And there'd still be time to change our minds, but you'd have to do that tonight.
Well, so there's one, okay, I guess I was assuming that if sequestration, if affected us at the full level, that you were going to end up cutting to Spanish teachers. Am I understanding that, or is it part of the budget?
This one cut is because of the budget.
Okay.
There is nothing that has guided me to, or directed me to look at, I mean, the board made the decision for a one Spanish teacher
I
cut.
think I'm just confused because it says FY, 2013-14 budget, and it lists Spanish teacher, and then it says anticipated
Yeah,
teacher.
it's not-
So
I see.
not very
I
clear.
didn't understand that the
Yeah.
What that means, that
anticipated
first one, the
was also
FY2,
the budget.
the
Okay.
2013-14 budget has to do with the decisions you made in the budget process.
Yeah.
You said 2 BHS teachers
Right.
and 1 Spanish teacher. The 2 BHS teachers had a dollar amount attached to that.
Okay.
And then what we're actually putting forward that you're acting on tonight, consent agenda, the anticipated teacher positions reduction in force is 1 BHS special educator, 0.6 BHS English language arts, 1 FTE elementary Spanish teacher, and 0.4 district coach position. By coach, I do mean academic coach, as in literacy or math. I don't mean extracurricular.
Okay, so this part here had nothing to do with sequestration, is what you're saying?
Right,
Okay.
right. It had to
Okay.
do with the RIF tonight.
Gotcha.
Any other questions regarding this? Commissioner Mattson?
It's not related to the riffing, but
Okay.
it's to the code non-renewal. What does that exactly mean?
Oh,
We have one non-renewal on here, and it's different.
NRN.
An
let's see who it
NRN.
is.
Right.
Nicole.
Sarah Jane, could you answer that question?
Yes, it's a first-year teacher who,
We're non-renewing. Within the first 2 years of a teacher's position, we can choose to continue or not.
Not choosing to continue or not continue a contract, it doesn't mean we're getting rid of a position or anything like that.
Correct, it doesn't.
Okay, good, thanks.
Any other questions regarding the consent agenda? Any of the minutes or anything needs to be changed? Are you? Commissioner, come to-
So the position that we did approve in the budget for the social studies coach, or,
Right.
maybe not quite that
It was-
title, but will that position be affected? Would that be considered academic coach?
No, I think, yes, it would be considered an academic coach, but it's not funded by title, it's locally funded, so it's not where I'm looking, what's specifically funded by title right now is math and literacy coaches, not that particular position, so
That was
it's
through
not on the
budget.
table.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Are you ready for the question? All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Our next item is a motion to go into executive session. Can I have a motion to go into, Commissioner Mattson?
I would move that we go into executive session to discuss the real estate matter and a personnel discussion regarding the superintendent's evaluation, where premature public disclosure could place the school at a substantial disadvantage.
Is there a second to that motion, Commissioner King? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?